This is the Effective Executive Axiom number 17, and I've named this Actions and Inactions Have Consequences. Now, there are two things that kind of go around the management circles, especially in academia, but there there are errors of omission and errors of commission. Now, the first time I heard of these was through Russell Acuff, and but they originated in really accounting. And errors of omission are mistakes made when someone fails to take action or fails to do something that they should have done. And errors of commission is basically taking action but taking the wrong action. Um, so Russell Acuff had a little bit shorter definition of each of these, which was errors of omission are not doing something that should have been done. And also, his definition of errors of commission is doing what should not have been done. So, those are two things that you run into. And I think it fits into a lot of the uh, systems thinking components, the synthesis of data, and really fits into my broader, effective executive versus, uh, you know, efficient executive, or analytical versus synthesis, which I have uh, videos that are in my start here that are at the beginning of this video. It really fits into those um, categories of things that I address in the 95 method, which I'll get to at the end. But commission errors are things like, I'll give you some examples, a new product or service that everybody's really fired up about, but it has no or very little demand for it, and the uh, it being a commission error, it's because there was a lack of research, or maybe none, in many cases. And I see people, launch different services or different products, thinking, "What a great idea," and never check the marketplace and whether it is a good idea or not. And then another example would be decision making without input from others, um, and then you're going to get decreased engagement. So, this is rooted in a lack of system knowledge for these commission types of errors, and actually both of them, errors of commission and errors of omission. But it's usually comes from, if we take the definition of doing what should not have been done, or as some people would use the analogy of rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, that they're usually trying to optimize a part, and because they don't see the entire system, they're focused in on trying to get one thing. It could be a project, and oftentimes I see projects that are kicked off as good ideas, and especially people that are in the Lean and Six Sigma world get so focused on, well, I've got to try and improve this thing, and no one ever asks the question of, is it something that should be done at all? And so those are commission types of errors. And when we look at the errors of omission, a couple of examples are: company fails to adapt to the changing needs of customers and their preferences that they have out there. And a lot of this, again, is lack of a system that allows for the system to react to changes in these preferences and needs of customers. And what happens typically is a lot of information is gathered via data, or some report or something like that, and the decision making has been separated from the people who have the knowledge on the front line. They're dealing with customers every day that probably, usually, pretty immediately can tell you that there's something different going on, um, in that system. And you know it's by not engaging the people that, or even making them aware that you're interested in knowing changes that are going on, because they're checking off their, how many calls did I make, take today, and that immediate call. Unless they're looking broader, they're going to miss customer needs and preferences. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's just the way that we've designed our systems. And so these customer needs and preferences are missed because eventually, maybe through a report or through some data, an executive's going to find it, but the boat has already left port. So it's one of those things where the needs of the customer and the changes and your inability to adapt has to do with the fact that all of this stuff is separated in the hierarchy of executives down to the front line, and the front line needs to be aware that there's something going on, and that's why putting decision making in their hands makes a lot of sense. Another example is the failure to communicate changes, and I see this a lot. I remember as a young executive in a company that, I was told that, hey, we're supposed to be using this vendor. And I was like, okay, how would I have known this? Well, before you were here, I put out a memo saying that this is something that should be done. That we go through this particular vendor in order to ship these products, types of things. Well, how would I know? And there are a million examples, obviously, that people have, especially when you're separated from the hierarchy of executives down to the front line, that things just don't get communicated. They're either communicated poorly, which is one situation, or they're not communicated at all. And this is this kind of with silos, and the silos could be between departments, or it can be from levels in the hierarchy. But that's those communication types of things are errors of omission. But again, these things are rooted in a lack of systems knowledge or synthetic thinking, and you're missing the impact on others because you're focused on your department or your project, or making sure that executives are on board together, but that everybody else in the organization is going to be affected by this. And so these things are really, they're not completely avoidable, but if you're going to avoid these two types of errors, then it requires a deep knowledge of your system. The better you understand how the whole is, and not just the pieces out there. And again, whether that's by department, individual, hierarchy, it doesn't matter. That the better that you understand how those things put together, the more that you're going to understand, different impacts on different areas within the organizations. And executives, I find, become more competent when they understand the whole system. And I think the days of, well, I'm in finance, I don't really need to know that, are gone. Everybody needs to understand how they fit into delivering a product or service to a customer and doing it well, and how they fit into that entire system. And that's why I always advocate for kind of ancillary or support areas within an organization to have some type of program where they're constantly having to go back in and understand what the customer's doing. Now, a lot of times I do that via, a contact center, or maybe going on a few sales calls just to kind of get a sense of how the organization runs, and you run into problems because there are usually so many objectives that each department has independent of each other, and a lot of times they don't fit. They're missing each other. They're not interconnected. They're not part of a system, but they are grown out of individual disciplines like finance, like sales, like IT, and so they're missing this customer component and understanding how they are involved in that entire system. And so this is what really the 95 method is about. It gives this whole system view, beginning with, listening to interactions with customers, at the front line or whoever's interacting with customers, be it sales or a technician or whoever does those types of interactions, that people are understanding what customers are needing out of the system that you put together, and are you delivering to what their needs are. And so synthetic thinking is hugely important to avoid these errors of omission and errors of commission. And it's something you have to work at. It's something that you have to have in your system in order to make people aware of how they're connected to the customer. Anyway, that's what I wanted to cover in this axiom. And remember, there is always a better way.